Hi, greetings everyone. Thanks for joining. I know there's many people from all around the world joining us today. I'm here in California, and my name is Daniel Swid. I'm a founder of Better Worlds, which is a storytelling and communications platform. Sea Change is a story that I'm particularly excited about. It's about our changing world. It's about positive action, personal commitment, science, nature, climate, restoration, courage, and so much more. Just the thought of this adventure that these 6 women are about to embark upon has been so inspirational and motivational for myself and my family. It's also a story that all of us here today are actually already a part of just by joining today. My daughter Zoe is here with me today.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm a freshman in high school, and I want to thank you all for joining us. And I'm really excited to hear more about this adventure.
So as a brief summary of our time together, we're going to kick off with a video followed by an overview of the expedition, introductions from each of the crew members, and you'll also learn about ways you can support or get involved and stay up to date during this adventure. You'll notice there's some controls in your browser, a place to voice your comments or questions. Please use those as you listen, as moderators, we'll be monitoring those, and there's going to be plenty of time for Q&A. So let's begin with the sizzle video.
Well, we knew we were going to be challenging conditions. It's one thing to say it, another thing to be out here. We're a crew of 6 women who work in the fields of nature and climate. In the summer of 2024, we'll be rowing continuously and unsupported 2,000 miles around the coast of Great Britain. The British coastal seas are some of the hardest that there are because we've got some of the strongest tides in the world. So our lives are going to be ruled by the tides. Half the time they'll be with us and half the time they'll be against us.
The wind picked up pretty suddenly. At one point, I was sure that I was about to break my legs.
We'll be collecting data on the biodiversity, the microplastics pollution, the sound pollution, and the temperature and salinity of our seas, so we can build the most comprehensive picture there is of the overall state of the British coastal environment. And we'll be telling the stories of all the amazing things that people are doing right the way around the coast to restore and regenerate our coastal ecosystems. There's lots of risks and challenges that we need to confront, but overall the opportunity to be out there and to see the incredible beauty and richness of this island from the outside and to tell those stories to help drive positive action is the reason that we're doing this expedition. I'm Kat Bruce, and this is Sea Change.
And with that, I want to welcome Kat Bruce to the stage. Welcome, welcome, Kat, skipper of the crew. Oh, Kat, it looks like you're muted.
Okay. Now I'm not muted. There we go. Brilliant. Technology is not what we're best at around here. Sorry, I've just spent quite a long time trying to even get into this room, but it's fantastic to be here. Thanks, Daniel and Zoe, for the lovely introduction. Thanks everybody for joining as well. It's funny just watching that video. It makes it suddenly feel real, actually, for the first time, and knowing that people are all here to listen and find out about our adventure and ask us some questions, which is fantastic. So I'm going to start off just by introducing myself and a bit of a sort of very quick overview of what it is that we're taking on. And then I'm going to bring in the rest of the team and we will talk you through some of what we're going to be doing. So I'm the skipper of the Sea Change row. My day job is actually I am the founder of a company called Naturemetrics, which does the environmental DNA, which is where we're analysing the tiny traces of DNA to understand the biodiversity that's in the sea. And that was what led me originally to get involved with GB Row Challenge. We were approached at work by this team of slightly crazy sounding individuals talking about rowing around Great Britain and wanting to put technology and science into boats. And they wanted to put eDNA into the boats. And I think they really wanted a discount on the eDNA samples. But along the way, they heard that I am a rower and had done a lot of expeditions. And before I could turn around, somehow I was in the boat. So I'm the one in the team who's crazy enough to do this challenge twice. And having done it once, come back for more. Basil, I don't know if we can bring up the slides now, because I just wanted to show you the boats that we're talking about. There we go. So when I got involved with GB Row Challenge, I found this was the setup. The team behind the challenge had got 3 identical ocean rowing boats, each of which fits 6 people in. And they had this amazing team of technology partners that had already come together around these boats to build science and technology into them. And the concept is we take this challenge, which is rowing right the way around Great Britain, which the founders of GB Row Challenge were the first people in the world ever to do when they were told it was completely impossible. And while we go, we're collecting data that feeds into a long-term study run by the University of Portsmouth, which we will hear more about later on today. So I got involved and was part of a team called Team Albatross, which took on this challenge in 2022. I was a little surprised to find myself in the team because when I joined them, they were a group of all men, all very large men, most of whom had a background either in the military or in Olympic sports. I'm still not quite sure how I ended up in that group, but I did, and it was wonderful. And we were successful. We got all of the way around. That opportunity to see the land, to see this country from the outside, from a perspective that people very, very rarely get, and to understand actually and appreciate just how rich and beautiful our coastal environment is, sort of completely blew me away. But when I got back, I felt like there was more that could be made of this opportunity, because I felt like a lot of the narratives that we were using when we told our story were really around the threats and the pressures and the pollution, and those being the reasons why we were collecting the data. And of course, those things are all true, but I also knew from my day job that there are people right the way around the coastline that are working to restore and protect and regenerate our coastal environment. And I think those are the stories that I wished we'd told when we were doing it last time. So the idea to put together this new team really came from a conversation that I had with Chrissy at New York in Climate Week 2 years ago. And I was saying how I wished we'd told these positive stories. And somehow this idea came from that to say, right, let's do it again. And let's put together a team of all women who come from environmental fields, so we can bring our own perspectives and experience to this, and let's tell those positive stories, and let's spread a message that it is absolutely possible to achieve a future where we have a healthy, rich, regenerated ocean. It's absolutely within our grasp. So that was the beginning of the Sea Change team. And perhaps now we can bring in the rest of the team and introduce ourselves.
Does that mean I'm up next? I think we're all just coming in.
I think we're all coming
cool.
in.
Okay, good. This is fun.
Chrissy, yeah, why don't you, I've mentioned you already, so why don't you take it away?
Totally, sounds good. Well, thanks, Kat, and thanks for being the crazy person who's kind of brought us all into this really exciting adventure. Thanks everyone for being here today. I'm Chrissy. The thing really driving me to participate this is just my own passion for conservation and biodiversity and my concerns around the biodiversity crisis. I mean, from, my whole life have just been inspired by the magic that is the diversity of plants and animals on Earth, and just a deep desire to try to do something myself about it. And that led me to the field of ecoacoustics. So I've spent most of my, career working on connecting people, bringing environmental and biodiversity monitoring technology into projects that can make use of data around the world. And that led me to Climate Week a couple years ago, as Kat mentioned, and just got so excited by the idea of getting back into the field and doing something, with a small group of passionate people. And as Kat said, getting to use that as a real platform to tell the story of so many incredible initiatives that are happening by so many amazing people that are really making progress on these massive challenges that humanity is facing right now. So we assembled the coolest group of women ever. I'm so excited to be trapped on a boat with you also crazy people. So I'll pass it over to Aoife to introduce herself next.
Cool. Thanks, Chrissy. So hi, I'm Aoife. I'm the first mate on the boat, so I'm helping Kat with a lot of the navigation side of things. So I joined the crew probably about 18 months ago now, after hearing Kat's inspiring tale of the first time she rode around Great Britain, and thought, why not? It sounds like a good challenge. I really like the purpose of the challenge. I firmly believe that it doesn't take one of us acting perfectly to solve the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. It takes all of us acting imperfectly. So by doing this, I hope to inspire more people to see their sea change moment and to take part in some kind of action to help improve where they live locally or in the global plane. So I'll hand over to Jess.
Hey everyone, I'm Jess. As my friends and family have joined this call, thank you. You'll know me, I'm driven by adventure and the opportunity to take on a challenge. Mostly always looking for the highest mountain to climb or something to explore that takes me out of the day-to-day routine. I'm not very good at sitting at a desk, even though I have a desk job. So being able to row around Great Britain with a group of like-minded women, it ticks so many boxes for me. Being outdoors, pushing the limits of what we think our bodies and our minds can endure, as well as actively contributing to the cumulative data set of the health of the coastal waters through the data that we're collecting is very motivating. It's mind-blowing, actually. And then the opportunity to share our stories and collaborate in the right direction about restoration and conservation. It's so much all in one box. Back in Cape Town, where I'm from, for those who don't know, I always saw people who inspired me crossing oceans in rowing boats, but I never really thought that it was something that would be accessible or possible for me. So I was an observer for those adventures. So when this opportunity came along in November, through LinkedIn, I just I couldn't not apply. So I just thought, when in life are we going to have the opportunity to do something like this? So that's me. Handing over to Lorena.
Thanks, Jess. So I'm Lorena. I'm based in Essex. I'm a finance director of a consultancy firm. My nature contribution is I'm responsible for our ESG strategies and corporate sustainability goals. I started rowing when I moved to my current location on the River Colne. Joined the local rowing club, learned how to row fixed sea wooden gigs. But I remember friends of mine saying, even back then, there'd be a clip about rowing across the Atlantic or something, going to the oh my God, you've got to aspire to do something like this. So when I went to Portsmouth for an open day with the rowing club, UEC Rowing Club, and I met Kat, I was completely inspired by the whole drive and determination behind what is GB Row Challenge. It's not just taking on that challenge of every tide and every coastline and all the dangers that come with it. It's collecting all of this data and a 5-year project to put it together and see the journey of our oceans and the habitats and the species that are within them, I think is just such a wonderful thing to be a part of. So I was completely inspired. I was very lucky that when I asked if I could join the crew, they all said yes. And I'm really looking forward to spending time with these amazing people. So I'm oh no, we're not going on to that. I will hand over. Let me hand over to the next person. Let me hand you over to Laura.
There you go. I was muted. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for turning up tonight. The way I got involved with Gibbero Challenge is a totally different route. I started a PhD for the research projects that Gibbero Challengers are collecting data for. And so I joined as a data analyst, and I wasn't thinking of doing it until I met Kat, and I met most of the crew already on a practice outing that I was subbing for originally, and I just fell in love with everything about it. Just the kind of bonds that we were forming already after like a day, but just a day fully together and fully switched on to be on the boat and row and take us places. Fell in love with the people, and it changed a bit, but I love all these women here. And I just loved the idea of exploring our marine environments, both in terms of lived experience and in terms of the data, because we can get such different pictures from each. And I love the idea of combining both experiences. And so that was that until about 3 weeks ago. I'm getting emotional now with because it's such an amazing thing, but unfortunately I've had to step away from it for medical reasons. But I'm still super excited for the mission of this thing, so I'm still fully part of the crew, and I'm going to contribute from the land to our mission about sharing all the stories that all the work that people are doing around the coastline to restore ecosystems. And we were fortunate enough, silver lining, that I had to step away when we still had some time to find a seventh member. As you may have noticed, we are 7. So that the crew can still row around as a 6. And so with that, I will pass it over to our 7th beloved crew member, Madeline.
Hi. Hello. So I'm Madeline. I am the final edition, having just joined a week ago, I think now. And I'm really excited to jump in with both feet. I've been working in the environmental sector for almost 6 years now, more than that even, doing research on mangroves and aquaculture and how we raise our seafood and general ocean health. And I couldn't be more excited to join such an incredible group of women. I feel like they all kind of covered different points of what is driving me as well. But I just remember seeing pictures and reading stories of expeditions like this when I was little, and it inspiring me to enter into the environmental field and giving me hope that I could do something too. And the idea that I could then be a part of something like that for anyone else is just beyond. So I'm really excited to spend 6 weeks on a boat with all of these women.
Cool. I think we can jump into it. Yeah, do you want to pull up the slide deck? And something we also wanted to say is whatever questions come up for everybody throughout this, we're going to tell you about kind of how it works, what we're doing. Please send questions in the chat. We're super happy to answer them. I had a lot of questions when Kat first told me about this, so I'm sure others will too. So who's taking away logistics? Lorena?
I think you're muted, Lorena.
Sorry. So yes, the boat is there and split with the 2 cabins on either end, and we have 3 rowing positions. So with the 6 of us on the boat, 3 of us are based in the stern cabin, and 3 of us are based in the bow cabin. The bow cabin is a little bit longer, so luckily those of us with slightly longer legs are in there. We rotate 3 on, 3 off, so that's 2 from one end and 1 from the other end, and we'll change that rotation every day. There are all of the comms and navigation equipment in the stern cabin. So that's where Kat, our skipper, and Aoife, our first mate, will be with one another. And then in the bow cabin, we have the motor and the water maker beneath our floor, as well as other storage in the bow. Shall we go to the next slide? Okay, so we've got responsibilities on the boat, and one of the things that we've made sure is that we cover each other. There's going to be days where people are feeling good, there's going to be days when people are feeling less good, but with all the responsibilities, there's more than one of us responsible for each thing so that we can support each other no matter how anybody's feeling. In the bow cabin, we are responsible for the food. We have a jet boil where we boil our water, and then dehydrated food that we will put the water in and leave it to do its thing, a bit like a posh pot noodle. We've got some amazing flavours coming with us though, so some very interesting meals to have. The picture that you can see there on the slides, that's about 2 to 3 days for a crew. We've got to take 50 days with us on board, so 3 meals a day, that's 900 meals we'll have with us on day 1. So I look forward to having my appetite to eating some of those. And you can see that we've got the pouch sitting there in the top left-hand corner there in a small cool box. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that we've got syringes to move that boiling water from the jet boil to the pouches sitting in the cool box. And we figured through trial and error, learning what not to do to make that the safest way to make our food and pass it between the cabins.
I mean, should we just tell the story of what happened and why we want to use that real quick?
Do it. Your story.
We've learned a lot through trial and error, like a lot of learning by doing. I feel like we've done multiple practice rows for different lengths throughout the past year and a half. And I think I've learned like a lot on every single one. I was trying to distill some of that from Madeline earlier today. I was like, well, you need to think about how you're storing your clothes and having multiple bags. And like, if your shoes get really wet and don't dry for a long time, you just don't have shoes. So there's lots of things you don't think about. One of those was I was cooking on one of our first trips out, and it was very wavy. So, you know, you're moving like this. And we boil the water. It's like fixed to the wall, the jet boil, and then it's just a pitcher, right? So you have your bags of freeze-dried meals, and you have your pitcher of boiling water, and everything's going like this. And I was just like, oh God, everyone's hungry. I need to pour the water, and just poured it and poured boiling water all over myself. Promptly passed out, and then these nice people got to take me to the ER, and they peeled off all of my burned skin and bandaged me up. And so I'm very passionate now about the cool boxes and the syringes, and very excited about these new advancements. So yeah, lots of exciting times learning all the things we need to think about. But back to you, Lorena.
We are learning all the time, and but we're coming up with some brilliant solutions. I mean, who would have thought a massive syringe and a small cool box would be the answer to that issue that we're having? So, you know, we're working on it. My story is I'm the one that gets seasick, so I'm the one that's never got an appetite for the first few days, and I really look forward to getting my appetite, because I learned on our last training room, which was 5 days, that about day 3, day 4, I actually get hungry. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that bit. And also we take lots of snacks with us, so lots of high energy snacks. It's the best opportunity to stuff your face with anything and everything you fancy eating at the time. So lots of food. So not only are we the chefs for the food, we're also the taps for the water. That picture looks like it's upside down, but it's actually taken from a video. It's a still from a video of Jim taking us through how the water maker works, which is from the view of our hatch into our cabin. So that water maker, filter and motor is all in below the deck of our cabin. So the water maker filters the salt out of the seawater, make it drinkable, and obviously we need water not only to drink but to make the food. It's something that is a daily challenge to make sure that our crew are drinking enough. Jess is our water lady, telling everyone it's half an hour into your shift, have a drink. We're getting better at that, aren't we, Jess?
Yeah, I think we're getting there. And the first couple of days into our 5-day row, our qualifying row, which I'm super impressed that we did it. That was a big achievement for us. It was making sure that, every time someone goes on shift, that all the water bottles on deck are full of water. So we have our own personal water bottles, and then we've got water bottles on deck, so that we don't, if we don't always have to lug our own water bottles onto deck, we've got them there. But they need to be filled every time, so that we can stop. We do like it every half an hour. We'll call a water break from bow, so moving from bow to stern, and then we'll all take a good glug of water to make sure that we're hydrated. And on our 5-day row, there was a fair amount of troubleshooting for the water maker, which we learned a lot in just figuring out where various things could go wrong, like sticky valves, or how to get an airlock out of the water maker, as things that we've had to learn through experience, which is the best way to learn. Yeah, cool.
And we use solar panels to charge to get the power on the boat. So boat maintenance is really important on a daily basis. So getting the salt water or the salt residue off of the solar panels is something that's really important. But there's loads of moving parts on the boat. So, the foot plates, the seats, the rollers, the bearings, we've got a varied understanding of lots of things. So should anything go wrong on our road, hopefully, we definitely will have the tools, but hopefully we'll also have the knowledge to know what to do with that. And we've got land support to help us with that as well, so we can always call on that. But the water maker, takes a lot of power, so we run that between 12 and 3 in the day. So the sun, if it's out, or the brightness of the day is at its strongest, so we can draw in as much power as possible to make that one. Basically, the message to everybody is we look after our boat and she looks after us.
Thanks, Lorena. And actually, it's quite the next thing we want to just tell everyone a little bit about is the navigation. And this is a really good segue to the navigation, because the picture in the middle bottom there shows the feet of one of the rowing positions. That's the feet of the middle position, and the wire that goes across the top of it is how we steer the boat. So obviously we're moving backwards. We can't see where we're going. We don't have anybody sort of facing forwards with a rudder strings. We have to do that all from one of our feet. So the wire there is connected to the rudder, and you turn the boat by turning your foot. And we have a navigation panel, like a sort of sat nav, that we can see ahead of us, so we can see whether we're going in the right direction or need to correct. And of course, we're doing that all the time, taking into account the tides, which are often going across us and pushing us in the wrong direction. So one of the things we've had to learn a lot about is how you navigate on a surface which itself is moving and often pushing you in the wrong direction. And while the navigation sounds in many ways quite simple, because we are basically we keep the land on our right hand side, we should be okay. Actually, the intricacies of it are surprisingly challenging, and actually one of the most one of the things that occupies most of our time on the boat. So Aoife, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about some of the things that we have to think about with the navigation?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so like Kat said, it's kind of more complex than you would think, and definitely more complex than I thought when I first joined the challenge. As you can see here on the slide, there's like a little route plan, but the stars actually indicate what we call tidal gates. So around mainland Britain and part of the coast of Ireland is surrounded by lots of big land masses. So you've got France and the rest of Europe on one side, and Ireland on the other. And this creates some fairly strong currents, and currents that we won't be able to row against at specific points, and could actually be quite dangerous because they could push us into quite dangerous situations, especially up near Northern Ireland and Scotland. These are known as tidal gates, and we have to work quite closely together with our land teams, but also the rest of the team on the boat to understand, one, where these are and what times they might occur. So the tides themselves have kind of 6-hourly cycles, and at some points we'll be able to row against a tide that is against us and maybe maintain position. So on our 5-day row, we experienced this where we were abreast of Lyme Bay for about 6 hours. So you had a 2-hour rowing shift. You then went to sleep and had your nap for 2 hours while your other team members rowed for 2 hours, and you woke up and you're in the exact same position you left them in, which is something we all have to get used to about rowing, just to keep pace rather than rowing to go through somewhere. So that was definitely a steep learning curve on our first outing. But we get through that. There will be some places where we can't do that, and we might have to anchor up or find some shelter or use some of our equipment on board to make sure we can get through these difficult sections. So if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so these are some of the navigational aids we have with us, which can help us kind of find paths through these routes and inform us about how we can plan them. So tides are fairly certain. We can get them from the almanac and some different websites, and we know what will happen when ahead of planning. So we've all been looking up the route map at the moment and trying to plan around, but the weather is something we can't really plan for until maybe perhaps a few hours ahead of time. And that really does change our plans quite rapidly, especially if the wind will be blowing us onshore, offshore, coming against us or behind us for certain periods of time. So Kat and I will probably be using all of the apps on our phones, calling our land team. So Laura will be on land, who'll be able to help us out with some of this, as well as some of our other friends and family, just to make sure we can find the safest route through. I don't know if you wanted to add anything here, Kat.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a huge exercise in integrating a lot of different forms of information and trying to figure out the interaction between the tides, the winds, the land masses, the condition of the crew, etc., and deciding when we, in some places we're able to anchor and wait out a tide that we can't row against. In other cases, we're not able to do that, and you have to keep rowing. Our cruising speed is between 2 and 3 knots, which is extremely slow. So if you've got a tide against you that's 2 knots, then in theory we should be able to just keep moving against it. But actually then as soon as you've got 6 or 7 knots of wind against you as well, you can't anymore. So there's a huge amount of sort of re-navigating every day based on exactly where you are and what the weather's doing. And your brain is really tired because you're never sleeping more than about an hour and a half at a time. So it's I think this is one of the biggest sort of intellectual challenges and brain stretches that we'll experience. But we're getting better at it.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and we actually managed to navigate through the Needles, which is the kind of pinch point near the Isle of Wight, quite successfully in the dark on our 5 days. So that gave us all a bit of a confidence boost, I think. So yeah. Ooh, it went too. So yeah, these are some of the equipment we have on the boat to help us. So the big yellow thing you can see Kat holding in that picture is called the parachute anchor. So that essentially can hold us steady in high winds and quite rough conditions. It basically balloons out like a parachute under the water, and it will hold us steady in tough conditions. And then you've got the main anchor where we can go in and find some shelter if need be. So that's me there trying to put it back in its case. And then, that's just some nice pictures of us when we were on the Isle of Wight on our 5-day, not so long ago, enjoying the sun. We did know that maybe enjoying the sun isn't the best idea if you have to row afterwards and you haven't had enough water. So swings around.
when we're anchored at night, it's quite nice anchoring because you can have a longer sleep, except that you always have to have somebody out on deck, just checking that we're not slipping. And so even when you think you're going to get a longer night's sleep, you still get woken up to go and sit on deck for an hour every few hours. So there's no respite really. Right, let's move on to talk about the science. Chrissy.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, guys. And that sunny day was so nice because it had been raining a lot the day before, and all of our things were quite wet. And I remember thinking, oh my God, why are we doing this in the middle of the rain when I was tired? And then the sunny day, just immediately forgot about all of that. And I was so stoked. So yeah, let's talk about some of the science and the data we're collecting. Big picture, it's such an exciting time to be tackling these challenges because we have the capacity to collect data and the technology to analyze it efficiently and at scale in ways that we never have before. So being able to collect massive amounts of data and then actually make useful analysis and insights out of that data. I mean, big data, AI, processing capacity, all these things are new technologies, and there's so much potential to really use them to inform what we're doing to tackle these massive problems. So this is a huge data set that's going to be collected. I mean, it's unprecedented work to have 3 years in a row of collecting this data set around the coast of Great Britain. It allows us to design conservation strategies, understand how climate change is really impacting ecosystems, inform. I was talking to Orsted earlier this week about how they're using data to inform they're building in wind farms habitat for species while they're doing this construction, and they're able to actually see how biodiversity is making use of these spaces that historically would have just been kind of obliterated, and they're seeing species coming back by using data to really inform action. We can also use it to better understand what is happening and raise awareness and kind of get all of our fellow humans on board with taking action in their own personal lives and being inspired. So I'm so excited. Laura is a part of the crew, and she is analyzing this data. She's going to make sense of it. And I would love to hear from her about what the heck we'll be collecting and how.
Thanks, Chrissy, for this introduction, setting me up really nicely into my research, basically. We're looking at temperature, microplastics, sound, including noise pollution, and eDNA, which is representative of the biodiversity in oceans, and how we are doing that. We have a sensor. Sorry, we're not showing it. It's a very small sensor, very portable, that we attach to our rudder that measures temperature. And so we can see with this plot, you can see the color reflects the temperature, and the more yellow is the warmer. And so we can see which areas are at what temperature, and with the multi-year data, then we can see how that's changing over time. And here you can see sorry, can you go back? The triangles are monitoring buoy stations that stay there, every day for several years. And you can see how there's a lot of gaps in this coverage. So this data set is unique in that it's the entire, coastline of the country. So unique in that sense. And then next slide, please. I've computed differences between the 2 years by averaging between small geographical boxes, and we can see which portions of our coastal waters are warming at different rates, and that will have influences on what animals can live there. And some areas where up to 2 degrees warmer, and that's significant. We have to remember that it takes a lot more heat to warm up water than air, so 2 degrees in water is quite significant. Moving on. Looking at microplastics, it's a synthetic material that's made its way to every part of the ocean, every part of the planet. And so what does that do to the ecosystem? Basically, a whole synthetic substance that didn't exist a few centuries ago, so species are not adapted to it. And we're finding that species interact with plastics, microplastics, by eating them, for example, which has impacts on their metabolism and energy level. and population growth. And there's also all the additives added in plastics that are released. So we're still early days into looking at the effects, but what GBRO Challenge is doing is that we're mapping, next slide please, we are mapping the quantities of these plastics around the coastline, and we can kind of see where the hotspots are and how that changes every year and how that's going to, which species are going to be exposed to these levels, basically. Next type of data that we are looking at.
Is it worth just saying this is such an incredible feat of engineering to have built this system into one of our storage hatches on the boat? And it's what the engineers have been working on for the longest time, I think, but it's such a tiny space and everything has to be made of metal, so that you're not putting plastics into the system and sort of contaminating it from its own sources. And it's pretty fiddly, but they've done an amazing job at building that in there, and it runs for 3 hours every day and filters about 200 litres of water each time.
Thanks, Kat. Thanks. The kit itself is really exciting as well, as much as the data. Next piece of kit is also another feat of engineering, whereas we have a microphone, we couldn't tow it behind the boat, which is a kind of usual setup because it would include drag. So we built it, and by we, I mean the engineering partners of GBRO Challenge, Hawin and Polver, and they and Arasakwa, and they built it into the rudder. And so we can capture all the sounds that are going past the boat, including cetacean clicks, snapping shrimp, and all these kind of animals. And also we can look at shipping noise and noise pollution.
Does this work if we play the sound? Oh.
Let's try and play the sounds. Doesn't work?
I don't think it, bother. I don't think it works. The sounds are embedded in there. They're amazing. It's so cool when you pull out the sounds of the dolphins and the shrimps and things. But I think the original purpose was really to look at the sound pollution, wasn't it, Laura? Because it's such a amazingly strong sense in the oceans because of how far sound travels. And so animals use it for everything: communication, hunting, finding mates, etc. And now we're putting ships all over the ocean and doing construction and things and disrupting a lot of that. One of the people we're really excited to speak to on our podcasts is some people who've been working in Vancouver on the where there's a pod of orcas that live very close to the big port in Vancouver, and they've implemented a new system where they're asking ships to voluntarily slow down to come into port to reduce the amount of noise so that it reduces the effects on the orcas. And then the port have agreed to give the boats a discount on their charges that they get when they go into port if they volunteer to slow down. So some really cool stories about how people are sort of working to try and reduce that sound pollution.
Yes. And then finally, we're looking at biodiversity with a new kind of more modern technology, which is environmental DNA. And so, as Kat referred to in the beginning of her talk, we can actually sample the tiny traces of DNA that are floating around in the ocean, and we can sequence them and get a match with different what species it is from. And so we are again, it's a custom-made system based on a pump that is set with a timer set to run autonomously. And so rowers change the filter every time it runs, basically, and store it on board. And so we're taking 2 samples a day, one in the morning and one in the evening, and we are looking at what species of vertebrates are present in there. And we can switch to the next slide. And here you can see the full filled dots are data points from 2023, and the open circles are data points from 2022. So we're really getting that coverage, which is really cool. And we're building the species list that we can compare to databases that are based on more traditional, maybe less efficient methods like visual sightings and stuff. And we are seeing really cool species. we are seeing species that the warriors didn't see, such as orcas. We picked up their DNA, and the warriors in 2023 didn't spot them. So it's that kind of combination of methods that is really interesting to study biodiversity.
There's some really cool opportunity to look at the implementation of some new policies as well. So one of the things that we pick up a lot of in the eDNA is the sand eels. I think, Laura, you've been doing some analysis on sort of looking at the distribution and the changes in the density of the sand eels as they have been in 2022 and 2023, and then just now they're bringing in a new law banning sand eel fisheries in the North Sea, because they're such an important species that really underpins like that whole ecosystem and supports all of the seabird colonies and all of that. And so now we're in a position where we've got 2 years of data showing what the distribution and density looks like now, and we'll be able to sort of show whether there's an impact from the banning of the fishery. So it's really cool starting to see this data really sort of intersecting with some new large scale policies and conservation initiatives. Cool. And I think that the last section that we really wanted to cover is the storytelling piece. And this is the bit that I started with. And for me, this has really been the driver of this whole initiative and the Sea Change project, is to bring these stories of coastal conservation and restoration to a wider audience. Because partly Chrissy and I in particular have the luxury of traveling around the world and hearing so many inspiring stories and amazing narratives. We want to try and bring some of those to a wider audience. So if I can have the slides back. Slides have gone. There they are. So this started off with wanting to tell the stories of all of the projects going on around the coast. So one of the first things that we've done is actually map out what is going on, and just that in itself has been such an interesting and inspiring exercise to do. There are so many projects. There's so many projects doing seagrass restoration, doing oyster reef restoration, salt marsh. There's a lot of projects working on seaweed and sustainable harvesting and use of seaweed, and actually building a new industry around seaweed. We've got projects looking at sustainable fisheries. We've got projects looking at crustaceans and lobster fisheries and things. And it really does build a picture of just an amazing amount of positive interactions that are going on around our coast. And some of these are like massive multi-stakeholder, multi-organisation projects at the sort of seascape scale. So some of the projects that Blue Marine Foundation are doing, which is our charity partner, are with sometimes 10 different organisations coming together around a very large area, and others are very tiny sort of community-led initiatives. So we want to give a chance for all of those projects to sort of have a platform and to tell their stories. And we've actually been getting involved in some of them already. So Aoife and I went down and Laura went down and volunteered for one of Blue Marine Foundation's oyster reef restoration projects. We spent a day labelling oysters before they were put back onto the reef in Hamble. This is just a different view of all of the projects. Oh, and one of the other things that we're mapping out is the cultural heritage projects, because of course Jess, who I don't think you mentioned in your introduction, actually, you work for ERM cultural heritage specialist.
Absolutely. So I thought I would bring a bit of a cultural twist into the team and think about what types of cultural heritage we could map along the way. I thought obviously we can, the UK and Great Britain is littered with cultural heritage. Like there's castles everywhere, as we saw on our 5-day row. Chrissy was quite impressed with how many castles we passed along the way. But my focus was more on intangible cultural heritage. And I tried to bring in, because we were a team of women rowing around the coast of Great Britain, I thought, how can we tie that in? And actually, Kat gave me a really good idea. And one of the things that we will be rowing past, and Kat, I think you might have actually stopped off at Wick. I don't know if I should mention that or not. But so one of the things is that the herring gutting that was done in the past it was predominantly women who would come from all over in the Scottish Highlands to gut herring, and they worked in like teams of 3, and all their belongings were transported from where they lived down to the area. So the herring are fish, obviously, that would spawn and run between northern Scotland and even all the way down to Yarmouth, which is kind of, if you look on the map, Great Yarmouth is, I suppose, halfway down, maybe a little bit further. I'm still learning. And women would travel from all over to come and gut these fish in groups. And they could gut like an average of 40 fish per minute with one stroke of a knife. So they really were phenomenal. And they made the industry. So as we go around the coast, and especially when we get into Scotland and the Scottish Highlands, we're going to focus on that. There's also a few other projects of interest that I'm trying to focus on. So one of them is Farne Island, which is on the east coast, off the coast of Northumberland. And another example is how the daughter of a lighthouse keeper, she rescued survivors off a cargo vessel which was wrecked on the rocks near the lighthouse in 1838. So just as we go around, I think it would be really good. We need to acknowledge what people have done in the past and how they form part of the intangible cultural heritage of Great Britain. I mean, I could probably talk for hours. The UK has recently ratified the UNESCO Convention for the Protection of Intangible Cultural Heritage. So that's going to unfold in many ways in the years to come, with companies like needing to integrate intangible cultural heritage into their developments. And that's part of what I do on my day job. But yeah, just to avoid going off on a tangent, and I know that we've got a few minutes left. But yes, so hopefully I can bring in as much cultural heritage as possible into this row.
Yeah, it's awesome. And actually, when you look at some of those historical stories, what's interesting is how much they're all about the blue economy. They're all about reliance on the natural resources and the natural wealth of the ocean. And actually, that's that link between people, nature, and the ocean is so incredibly strong in these coastal environments, and always has been. So it's great to be able to bring that in as well. So how are we doing this storytelling? This is probably the piece that we're trying to do our best swan impressions, but we're running really hard underneath the surface, and there's actually a huge team of amazing people behind us who are supporting us to make the most out of this expedition. So our sort of core anchoring narrative is that we want to spread the word that it is not too late, it's not too hard, and it's not too expensive to turn the tide on the degradation of our oceans. People are already doing it, and we can join the dots, and we can all help sort of push towards a collectively successful outcome. So we are going to be telling the stories in a few different ways. At the moment, we're doing a lot of interviewing of people to put together actually in a way, 2 separate podcast series. So we're interviewing a lot of people that particularly Chrissy and I have sort of met over the years, who can bring a big picture perspective around the importance of the oceans for humanity, the links between oceans, nature, climate, people, etc., and give us some of those big picture narratives. And that gives us the context then within which to tell the stories of those individual projects as we go around. So Laura's doing an amazing job contacting and interviewing all of those projects, and she's going to keep doing that while we're at sea. So it's actually amazing to have Laura on land and able to keep building up that content library. So in fact, some of the big picture podcasts are just starting to go live now. So we've had 2 go. I think one's gone live with Belinda this evening, and Samantha last week, and there's quite a few more that are sort of lined up already to come in, and more interviews coming on soon. And then the idea is we're going to build, Basil is working hard in the background. Basil, who runs Better Worlds along with Daniel, is working hard in the background building a website where you'll be able to see our boat going around, so you can track us, and as the boat moves around the coastline, we're going to populate the coastline with the stories of the projects that we're passing, so it will build up over time. And that website will also be the home for all of the video content and the bigger picture podcasts as well. We're also very lucky to be working with Lindsay Kent, who's a film producer, and we're hoping that we can pull in some funding sort of between now and actually a bit of time after the row to create a documentary film about this row in which the adventure itself is sort of used as the anchor, and then we use that to do the storytelling and to pull in the stories of the conservation projects and also the science and technology that we're using along the way. So I know they're very keen that we get ourselves into some really dramatic situations because it makes for really good film content. We're trying to sort of balance that with needing to get around safely and successfully so we can collect all the data. So we've got the podcast, we've got the film, and then we've also got a collaboration with Waterbear, who are a streaming platform, a bit like sort of Netflix, but for positive impact storytelling and filmmaking. And they're also going to be running a campaign to push some of our content. Yes, as Lindsay says, safe and dramatic is the goal. So then, yeah, it's just summarizing the website. So with the website is where you can find everything really about us. So we'll be also keeping a social media stream going as we're going. We'll be chatting to Laura all the time. So all of the sort of voice notes, films, pictures, sort of daily logs, etc., will come through Laura. Those will all go up onto the website alongside the tracker and the stories about the conservation projects. So hopefully that will become a really useful, informative and interesting place to go. I mentioned lots of people behind the scenes. Really want to give a massive shout out to all of our partners and sponsors. We've pulled together just the most amazing group of organisations who are, because of who they are also able to be fully integrated really into the stories that we're trying to tell. So we've got we've got some foundations, we've got some sort of impact capital companies, we've got several representatives of the wind industry. Now the wind farms is like, I didn't realize this before we went and did GB Row Challenge in 2022, but you know, the wind industry is such a massive feature now of our coastal environment, and we're going to be going through a lot of wind farms. They're quite fun to go through, and when you're going against the tide, you can count off the turbines that you managed to make it past. So it's great to have the wind industry on board and actually be able to talk about some of the work that they're doing to drive nature positive outcomes alongside the sort of industrial work that they're doing. And then we've got just a really great range of other sort of impact driven sustainable companies that are supporting us in lots of different ways. So massive shout out and thanks to, if there's anybody from our sponsors on the call, thank you so much. How can you get involved? Does anybody else want to talk through this? I feel like I've no.
Sure, I can add some.
Great. It took a while to get off mute. Sorry, go, Chrissy.
Oh, yeah, Jess, you want to go?
No, you first. I'll follow. It's all good.
Okay, you can add whatever I missed. I guess the first thing is get involved with this like grander initiative of all of us thinking about how we can contribute, right? I think we can all think about, what am I purchasing and how am I voting for the future I want to see with my money? How am I spending my time? Are there little ways that I can adjust my life to be more aligned with the goal of healthier seas and the planet? I mean, it's going to take all of us to tackle some of these challenges. And then more specifically, please follow along with us and tell your own stories. We set off June 9th, which is terrifyingly soon. As Kat mentioned, you can follow us on our website. That'll have a tracker that you can see where we are. You can see if we're moving or if we're still, and along with some of those stories. Donate to our charity partner, Blue Marine Foundation. They're doing incredible work all around the coast, also globally. So go read about their work and give some of your funds to that. And then as you saw in some of the photos with some of the oyster work that the team was doing, there's so many projects that you can get involved in locally. Seek them out, get involved. Again, this is a community effort. See, every single place we are is an ecosystem, right? My house is in an ecosystem. Where you're sitting right now is in an ecosystem. We can find ways to positively impact our surroundings and the earth anywhere we are. And starting locally is kind of the best way to do that. So yeah, we've got Instagram, LinkedIn. We'll be posting updates. The website, those are probably the best ways to keep track of us. And we're excited to kind of share our efforts with everyone else. Okay, there's our Instagram. That's how you can find us on LinkedIn. And then that's our website. If you have any ideas, that's our email address too that we'll be checking. So yeah, thank you so much for everyone attending. I know we're over time, but do we want to hang out for some questions? Or Kat, did you have something to say?
Well, I was just going to say the big thing, come and see us off. If you're around in or around London, we set off from Tower Bridge on the 9th of June in the afternoon, I think about 4 o'clock. And until then, between the 7th and 9th of June, we'll be hanging out, getting our boat ready, loading it, etc. at St. Catherine's Dock, which is right next to Tower Bridge. It's a really cool place to hang out. So come and say hi to us. And the send-off and departure is a very, very exciting thing to see. I think those of us who went along last year to see the crew off came away with goosebumps and immediately signed up for this year. So come and see us, but beware, you may end up signing up to get in a boat next year. Yeah, that's it really. Madeline.
We have several questions if we want to jump to the questions that people have asked. So top question is, any plans for a documentary about this voyage? Yes. Yes is the short answer to that question. And like Lindsay was saying, we're hoping to have some safe but dramatic scenes to include in there, and to really highlight some of those smaller stories that Kat was talking about before.
And you're bringing your drone now, Madeline, right?
Yes. So hopefully we will have some good drone shots of the boat.
Amazing. Yeah, we've been trying to practice getting used to filming ourselves, which is really hard to remember to do when literally just surviving is quite hard. And then dramatic things happen and you immediately think, oh gosh, we should have filmed that.
But I was also talking to Basil. Yeah, I was talking to Basil last night about, he was like, you also have to catch the drone on the boat. And I was like, oh yeah, you're like moving and then we'll have to somehow catch the drone also. So that sounds like a very interesting new challenge. It's going to be like everyone vying to try to grab it.
I'm going to be doing a lot of practicing with the drone between now and June 9th. Yeah. I might try and like run and catch it at the same time, just but there are laws. You're really not supposed to try to catch it in dangerous ways. But yeah. Anyway, someone would like to know if the boat can capsize.
I've done my best to answer some of these questions just in the chat.
The boat can technically capsize. They're designed to be self-righting. So if they capsize, they'll come straight back up. I think that straight back up probably feels like quite a long time if you're in the water. But we all have to, so we slightly made light of it, but actually we take a huge number of safety precautions throughout the row. So we always wear life jackets on deck. We're always clipped on to the side of the boat so we can't get separated from it. That's the most dangerous thing. And if you're in big seas, you keep all the hatches shut, which helps the boat rewrite if it does capsize. But before it capsizes, generally there's a lot of things that you can do to make sure it doesn't. So things like if you're in a big following wind, if you've got big tailwind, that's one of the capsize dangers, because the boat ends up going too fast down the waves and then sort of catches the next one and overturns. So before it gets to that point, you put out what's called drogues, which is like a sort of almost like a canvas bag that you drag along behind the boat, and it slows you right down, and it makes you very, very stable. Once you've done that, you're really the capsize danger is pretty low. So as long as we're sensible, we'll be fine.
Try really hard not to.
Jess has answered a lot of these.
I've tried. I tried to answer as we went.
Let's still ask them and talk about them.
Yeah. What's our boat's name? Correctly, like how much water do we need today? I've said 3 to 4 liters per person per day. I mean, I'm on the water watch, so I'm assuming everyone's.
So you decide.
including food. I included food in that because we need about a liter.
And one of my questions first coming on was, how are we fitting all of that water on this tiny boat for 6 women for 6 weeks? And it turns out we have water maker.
Yeah, but I guess additional to that, we do have what we call a ballast, which is this portion of weight in the boat, which is our emergency water supply, which is about 100 litres of water that we store in underneath the bow cabin for backup if our water maker has issues.
I see Esteban, who's a colleague of mine at ERM, so I'm biased. He said, are any large animals that you're expecting to see?
Oh, well, so I was actually amazed when we did it in 2022. We saw 7 or 8 whale sightings, all of them minke whales, I think. But I had not expected to see those just right around the UK. In fact, there's been humpback whales sighted off the south coast this year as well. The orcas, which we didn't see, and they were seen in the Moray Firth the day before we went across it. So they're definitely around. And then the girls from last year found the orcas in the eDNA. So I think this year we might see them for real.
I hope so. There's a question I want to hear everyone's answers to, which is, what have you learned most about yourselves as you prep for this? I'm super curious what you guys have learned about yourselves. If anyone wants to answer that one.
Well, I get seasick.
I have learned that I'm seasickness for Lorena. Yeah, same for me actually. I had a bit of seasickness, but I've learned that I work in a team much better than I thought. And I don't know if it's this team, but I've really learned a lot about just managing each other's and at during tough times and being sick and being tired and
I've learned that my appetite is like for 3 people at sea. Like I will, if there is any spare food, it will go in my mouth. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like survival tactics or what. I just eat. So that's what I've learned about myself. Yeah.
I think I've learned about everybody else actually in terms of what a blooming amazing team looks like. I know the first time we went out, the time when Chrissy burnt herself and Lorena and Laura were sick, and then Aoife was sick as well because Chrissy had burnt herself. And we had hard conditions with a big crosswind, which we could only just make our way through, some pretty big waves. It was, a tough session for our first time out. And I honestly got back thinking everybody was going to say, yeah, you know what, like this actually isn't fun. And we stepped off the boat and everybody said, wow, we learned so much about what not to do. Here's all the things we're going to do differently next time. And I was like, wow, okay, this is a team of people that I want to go to sea with. And that I feel, I feel like I'm very much learning at the whole skippering side of things, but we just feel like such a strong, like whole team that feels okay.
Totally agree. I'm like, we'll figure it out together. Like whatever happens, I really think we'll figure it out.
So. We've got an unusual question from Stacey Bright, which happens to be my sister. How do you keep yourself safe when at anchor? Is there technology to monitor movement?
I guess I can take this one. Generally, Anchor Watch. We all have apps on our phones at the moment, which we do use to kind of monitor where our boat's moving, but a certain amount of that is tide and the stack on the anchor chain. So a large majority is just our eyesight and the person on Anchor Watch, and just making sure we've chosen a safe and secure place with regards to the wind and the tide beforehand to make sure that we're not going to get stripped by wind and tide and move position too much. So Don't know if anyone
Yeah,
wants
actually
to add
finding
anything else.
a good anchorage in the first place is not easy. It's very easy to sort of say, oh, when you just stop and anchor, but actually you've got to be able to get in there in the conditions that are blowing. And once you get in there, you've got to have shelter from the wind in the right direction, and you've got to have the right sort of bottom and the right sort of depth. And so it's not always a given that you can find an anchorage when you need one. There are anchor alarms you can set on the apps where you sort of set a certain radius that the boat shouldn't move out of, and they'll go off, but we don't like to rely too much on those.
There's one question on the chat I'd really like to answer, actually, from Heidi Berger. Has your recent training row made you more nervous or more confident for the real thing? Personally, after successfully rowing from Portsmouth from Plymouth back to Portsmouth in less than 5 days, which was the window that we had, I was completely elated and so excited for actually going on the real thing. It's not to say it went really smoothly. It's not to say that we didn't have some difficult decisions to make, or a call to wait out a tide, or that one tide that we rode 6 hours for, and we actually moved probably about 40 meters backwards by the end of it. But I know that when I got off the boat, my entire being was like, I'm so ready for this. I'm so looking forward to getting on the boat with these ladies to do this challenge. And honestly, I'm so excited. So I think from my point of view, the nerves, I don't know where the nerves are. They might come as we get closer to the launch day, but pure excitement at the moment is what's driving me.
And a question about our practice rows and how long they've been. So we've had this Plymouth to Portsmouth row that took 4 days. And then previously we had a few weekends, 2 or 3 weekends. So a short, an overnight, Saturday to Sunday type of thing. And then we're going to have another overnight soon, next week, 10 days from now. Yeah, so a few 2 days here and there, and then a full day.
And that'll be Madeline's first experience on the boat, and sleeping on the boat. So it's good. We thought it would be good to give her one go at it before we set off. Most of us, we're supposed to have done 200 hours, but Madeline, you'll have done about 20.
And originally we weren't even going to do an overnight. I was like, well, first time I sleep on the boat will be will be after we take off.
Yes, it's definitely the right plan.
I do get at least one.
Yeah, the focus won't be on the sleeping.
Nobody's asked about the toilet situation.
I love that. I was waiting for someone to ask.
Do you want to take it away, Jess? You mastered it last time.
Oh my God, if we have to go there. Well, I feel like there's a reason why no one's asked. It's a very simple. It's a bucket.
We could do a poll. What do people think we do with the toilet? Do we have a toilet on board?
Poll for those who are still on the call. How do you think we go to the loo? Anyway, so it's a bucket. It's very simple. There you go. Yeah, you do what you need to do, and you buck and chuck. So yeah, it's one of those things. It's human. Every human being needs to do it. So it's a body versus mind thing, as Kat will tell you. I'm speaking, but I was probably one of the most nervous to cross that line when I first stepped on board. But yeah, it's part of what has to be done. Whatever goes into your mouth needs to come out the other side at some stage. So yeah, I won't say much more. You can use your imagination.
And at the other end of the spectrum, Lucinda's asked about whether we're allowed luxury items, and if so, what will we take?
I feel like the definition of a luxury item changes.
Yeah.
Like multiple pairs of underwear, like luxury.
Or room spray. I have room spray.
Room spray.
Oh, and you recently got a little tiny mirror to Velcro onto the inside of one of the cabins, right?
Yeah, that's bow cabin luxury.
Bow cabin luxury.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely getting a balance between like you can't take too much stuff because actually it makes your life way harder in such a tiny space if you've got too much stuff. So everything that comes needs to have a real purpose and it needs to be used. But at the same time, if there are small things that will like genuinely make our lives easier or slightly better or happier while we're out there and they're not going to take up too much space, then yeah, there's no reason to make it more difficult than it needs to be just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
What are we looking forward to during the challenge? Anyone
Personally, I'm looking forward to seeing Puffin for the first time in like the wild. That is like my dream. So that's going to get me all the way up to Scotland, I hope, because that's where I've heard you see most of
them. That's a good one. I really enjoyed the sunrise shifts where it's cool out and there's just these incredible sunrises over the water and you're just rowing along and the whole world is quiet and you're just like, in my very, very busy life, like this feels like a true moment of just like actual peace. That was like quite profound for me because I don't spend a lot of time being still or quiet. And so I'm actually kind of excited to be forced into stillness and like repetition and not just hustling all the time to like get all the things done. So I think that like those like moments of just like actual peace in my being is what I'm really looking forward to.
I'm looking forward to turning my phone off, Chrissy. You know, and not being at people's beck and call, and you know, it constantly going off, and you feeling like you need to respond. You know, we've all told all of our loved ones and our work people that we're going to be away. Like my phone will be switched off for lots of the time. It'll be great.
And there's just been a final question: will there be time for a swim?
Oh. I'm a scuba diver and I was really looking forward for that day where it's too windy to row and we kind of go and anchor in a bay that is protected from the wind, so it's quiet, like the water's calm. And I was gonna take my mask and snorkel with me to go for a dip, but yeah, I hope the team can do that for in my name.
We will honorary swim.
I'll bring like a symbolic mask and snorkel.
Well, we'll probably need a mask and snorkel anyway in case we have to go for a swim to fix something on the rudder or something like that.
Any opportunity to get in the water, I will
there's two different kinds. There's like the accidental swim, the mandatory swim, and the fun swim. There's different kinds of potential swims.
Yeah, I'm up for all three because that's the closest we're going to get to a shower.
Yeah, I feel that. Cool, guys. We're a bit over time. This has been super fun. You guys know where to contact us. Any other questions, any ways you want to get involved? We're super keen to make this a real collaborative effort. So reach out to us. Anybody else want to add anything? All good?
Yeah, this has been great.
You wrapped it up really well. Thanks everyone for showing up and showing the interest, and we hope to continue to entertain you through our adventure and the cruise adventure in progress.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll share links on how you can track us as we go around. I saw one last question about how people on land can send us love while we're out there. Yeah, we should have phone signal most of the way around. Plus, there's the Instagram and social media. So, yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great evening for what's left of it, or rest of the day for somewhere else in the world. And look forward to possibly seeing some of you at the start line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Totally.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
That was so good. I don't know if we're still.
Yeah.
I love the engagement.
The chat was